I think you can. And so just talk a little bit. I know some of them better than others, but I think, why should I do it? I want about 5 minutes of who you are, what you are, a little bit of how you got it. Some of the questions I gave you, how did you get? We're here for Women's History Month, so tell us, who got you interested? Who was your mentor? But first of all, tell us what you're doing now.
Okay, well, I know a lot of you here, so glad you all come to this.
This is Cappy.
Oh, my name's Cappy. And I got started in the photography business. Oh, actually, I got started when I was 10. I was taking pictures with the Brownies and I had a camera like every day, all the time. And then I thought I was going to be an artist, so I started drawing horses. I'll pass these around. And then I decided that the camera was a lot easier than drawing. It only took 1/500th of a second. So I can pass these around. So my dad bought me a cheap camera, which I think is in the picture over there. And my idol was Peter Winans. So I started being his shadow, and then he eventually hired me to be an assistant for Winans Brothers, and he encouraged me to be published in the Maryland Horse magazine. So that was the first place I got published when I was 15, I guess. And that got the ball rolling. I've ridden all my life. I still fox hunt. I have 3 wonderful hunters that are still going first fight with Green Spring. Although I see somebody in the audience who my new nickname is now Crash. But I am still here to tell you about that. So anyway, so I'm doing that. I'm retired from photography. I don't miss it because now instead of looking through the lens, I get to see the big picture. And I love what I see, and I love what I do. And I'm so happy to be here to share it with you guys.
Oh, that's a tough act to follow. Do I have to stay standing and talk? I do that all the time. My name is Karen Fulton. My husband and I own and operate Moon Farm in Kingsford, Maryland. So we're a short little hop across the reservoir from here. We are a full-service riding facility, but mainly what we do is we teach riding lessons, which gives us a chance to meet lots and lots of really cool people. I moved from the Chicago area way back when, graduated from Purdue and decided my job at the National Zoo took me here because, of course, we all know you can't make money in horses. You can't really have a job doing horses, so I was like, what am I going to do? Grew up riding and eventing, and saw an ad for the Brookfield Zoo and did an internship there, and then decided National Zoo sounded good because that was closer to Middleburg, because we all know you have to go to Virginia to do horses. Then I moved to Baltimore and decided you don't have to go to Middleburg to do horses, you can do it here in Baltimore. And so that led me to meeting my husband, and we ended up here. And so really enjoyed what we've been doing. We do recognized horse trials, pretty much anything that's legal to do with horses we do at our farm. And so I'm very pleased to be here and just astonished at the number of people that are here. Although they're not here for me, they're here for these ladies because that's who you came to see.
Well, and tell us a little bit before you pass on, because Cappy skipped this part. So naturalism, a little bit of your history. Like, who inspired you with your love of horses? Was it a parent? How did you ride as a little girl? Just give us a little bit about your
I was given the opportunity when I was 9 years old. I always loved horses. My grandfather gave me my first Breyer model horse, and I have about 350 of them hidden around their farm, so no one's going to know exactly where they are. I got a bunch. It was a real problem.
One had a Breyer horse show.
Yeah, if you need to ride horses for the library, let me know, because that would be a great place to put them. No, really. So that was my grandfather. For whatever reason, he actually moved from Lithuania. Well, he didn't really move. He was moved to Wayne, Illinois. If you guys know the Dunham big hunting tradition there, that's actually where I grew up. At Lamplights, going to events there, fox hunting with Wayne DuPage Hunt. And so that was sort of how that happened. No one else in my family had any interest in horses. My grandfather passed when I was about 4 years old. And when I was 9 years old, my parents were foolish enough to give me the choice between continuing piano lessons, which I was horrible at, or taking riding lessons. And so that was it. That was the end of the story. And then my poor parents got suckered into the horse trailer horses, the whole thing, and on we went. So that was sort of that. And I would say for other mentors, I would have to say strong women in my life, which weren't necessarily with horses, but with the exotic animal industry, and also my instructors. My riding instructors were people that helped me along the way. So I would have to say those were.
Let's backtrack, Cappy, and you fill in that part. You left out the mentor and history part.
Mentors, well, of course, Peter Winans, who I worked with for years until he moved to be the editor of the Chronicle, of course, and actually invited me to come with him, but as a writer. And at that point, my creative energy was all visual, so I just kept on with the photography. As far as mentors from the very beginning, Nancy Boyce was just a delight and so talented. And we put together the, what do you call it, horse shows, 3 things, and at the center part of the Maryland Horse, which eventually became Horse Digest, correct? Horseplay. Thank you.
Fill in the blanks on
Thank you. Also, my mother was my original inspiration because she made us get on the ponies, and if we fell off, get back on right away. I mean, every time you fell off, you had to get back on. We were, as far as work ethic, we had to do our stalls, groom our ponies, do all that, and if we didn't do it right, we didn't get dinner. Yes, she was tough. She was definitely tough like that. My instructors, my wonderful memories of Jill French. God bless her. She was fabulous. And Cassie Kingsley, Cassie Chapman Taylor, who I just saw at Foxhall races. She had a granddaughter riding in them. And so there's just so many, I can't even tell you. As far as me mentoring people, I'm not very good at it because I've always been a doer. I'm not a teacher, and I can answer questions, but I've never been good at having an assistant with me because it distracts me from my work. And so I'm like, you can watch me ask the question later. So many strong women in my life, including these ladies and everybody out here who's still going strong and loves horses. You got to be strong to love horses. You really do, and it takes a special bond and a special person. So I'm so happy to be at all of the company.
Thanks. Yeah, that's good. We'll have questions later, so just raise your hand or say your questions. We'll have time for questions. It should be on.
My name is Georganne Hale. I'm Vice President of Race Team Development at the Maryland Jockey Club. I grew up in Sparks. Dad was the bar manager there. We lived there for 40 years. I fought Sunday at a horse show. Mom used to show, and Dad used to be a trainer at the racetrack. Then I decided, after high school, I decided college to go to nursing school, believe it or not. So as I was in...
Picturing Georganne as a nurse.
Decided I didn't like people.
She's
I
been pretty cool.
was in college. I worked for Katie Boston and Merriman, and then one day Katie said, why don't you go to work, try to get a job on the management side of the racing, on the back side of the management side. And I said, Katie got me a job in the racing office, and I was the second girl in the office, the first girl being the boss's girlfriend, but I was the second girl. And I started out as the horse identifier, and then just had every job in the office, up to racing secretary. I was for 18 years, and I worked in the office for 39 years.
And you had some really interesting mentors. Are these people you worked with?
Effective, right? So
Yeah.
I would say the person person that taught me the most was probably my first boss, Larry Bundy. He was a horrible person. He was very smart. He was very smart. He knew his business. He taught me, how to work hard, how to,
He didn't scare you to death, and you're all right.
Exactly. But he wasn't a very nice person. But he was a very good boss, and he taught me how to work hard. And I think that's what got me to work my way up the ladder to eventually race secretary.
And mentoring, you fostered a lot of young women who come through.
I've had, the racing secretary and director of racing in Delaware work for me. The director of racing in Penn National worked for me. I've had two stewards that have worked for me. People work for me at Naira, work for me, but
It's quite a lot.
and everybody else is retired. It's worked for me. There are people that are still, they were younger.
Okay, thanks.
Nothing like going last, but I'm Cindy Halle. I coached at the polo program at Garrison Forest School for 21 years. I've managed polo clubs. I now umpire and do instructional clinics for the United States Polo Association. In fact, I head tomorrow to Central Coast of California to do the D2 College National Tournament. I love teaching. I love teaching polo. I love teaching kids how to work with horses. But I sort of stumbled on it. I was that kid that lived in the subdivision that rode her bike and found the nearest farm and sort of just hung around until they said, do you want to do something? And then, do you want to do something and learn some lessons? And then, do you want? So I was that kid. My mother was a cello teacher, did nothing to do with horses. And I sort of stumbled into polo. I was working at a hunter-jumper stable when I was in high school. I wanted to ride some more. I started exercising with polo ponies for a guy in Topanga Canyon. I grew up in California. And he sort of taught me a little bit about polo. And then I was already planning on going to UC Davis. They had a student-run polo club on campus, which, as one of my old teammates described it, was a little bit like Lord of the Flies. But we all survived and learned a lot, and it just was like, I loved sports, I loved to ride. If we rode, we didn't get to do sports at school, so all of a sudden I was able to put together this team sport and work with horses, and it was perfect. It was just a good niche. And that was in the late 70s, and I believe the first woman was recognized in the United States Polo Association about 1977. So I was basically really on the cusp of all that, which was really fun, and also some challenging. And as far as mentors, Sally Hale, who some of you may have heard of, was sort of the grand dame of polo, and she's famous for disguising herself as a man so she could play in the Riviera Country Club in LA. But basically, anyone who was a mentor was somebody who gave me an opportunity, who said, hey, you want to play on my team, or hey, you want to keep your horses at my place over the weekend so you don't have to pay for stabling, or hey, I've got this green horse, you want to finish it for me, which gives you another horse to play. So all those people, there weren't a lot of mentors, direct mentors at the time, but they just gave me a little hand or a little hand up. And so that's sort of what I, in my teaching and also in just sort of in my playing, I try and do the same thing. So, but I ended up at Garrison via Dan Cohen, who got me across to come all the way from California to play in a polo tournament in Lancaster County. I'd never been to Maryland. I didn't know anybody. I was like, this is the most beautiful place I've ever seen. It was June. I was at the Calhoun's Farm, which anyone who's been there is just spectacular. And I thought it was just amazing. And I came back the next year to the same tournament, and his little brain started turning. He's like, I want to grow the Garrison Forest Polo program. So that's kind of how that ended.
I wonder how polo came to Garrison, because I went to Foxcroft and they had no polo. We had Walton. I wish we had polo back in the day, but that's amazing. I mean,
And then of course I rented a room from Cappy's mother because I needed a place to live. So I was and then Ned was a neighbor. And Mrs. Jackson made it very clear that he was to be stayed away from at all costs. Bad news, just total trouble, and I was like, what's the address? So that's where that, and the rest is history, as they say.
I have a question. When you were a referee, did you, number one, did you ride a polo pony, number one? And number two, did you try to keep up with the person with the ball, or did you ride along the sideline trying to watch the whole thing?
So, yes, you are mounted. Well, I'll back up. Usually for polo, there's 2 mounted umpires, and there's a referee in the stands that any difference in opinion of the 2 umpires, the referee adjudicates. Sorry. And but the reason I like umpiring is it's so bloody hard to do. It's really, really, really challenging, and so I wanted to learn how to do that. A, so I could teach the students better, but because it was just hard. So the question you said about following the person with the ball, so you want to have one umpire that's watching the play from the side, and you want to have one umpire that's behind, because the one behind can see the spaces laterally in between people, and the one from the side can see nose to tail. So that's a very good question.
We'll talk about Garrison a little bit and what's, how that program is grown and all the kids that have, that are doing polo that have gone on. Started with you.
When I started, it was a part-time program. They had 6 ponies, and they were just doing fall and spring. And we grew it into having, right now, kids that are in 4th and 5th grade PE get a little taste of polo riding and dance. So we've integrated it into the PE program, which is pretty cool. They can start any time, but it's grown, and a lot of the kids have gone on to play in college. Some have made a career out of it.
There's scholarships available.
There's scholarships at some of the colleges, and a lot of the colleges don't have scholarships, but it makes you a pretty interesting applicant. And sometimes you have a coach that can do it. But I think more importantly is some of the girls that I coach, and we started a club program, evening program, which we called the Monday Night Riders, and we also had a club program. So we had a lot of teams competing at the same time. But more importantly, it was just that the kids tried something new and realized they could try something that was challenging and maybe a little scary and succeed at whatever their success level was. And some of them will never go on to play polo after high school, but they've tried it and they've done something different. And some of them, will go on. But I think more than anything, I just feel like, and I'm sure Karen feels the same way about teaching, is that you set an example and you end up teaching them all the other things that go along with horses and sport and all the responsibility and teamwork and accepting disappointment and winning graciously and all those kind of things. So I think those are more the things that I think to me are like more of the legacy that I wanted to leave. Yes, it's great to win games and all that, but ultimately you're trying to create good people.
Yeah, and I think Don actually has a program where they expose all the kids, and they all get the chance to ride from, little kids on up to try it. So, Karen, I want to hear a little bit more about you. How many lessons do you do? Where do you show? Tell us about any of your daughters being all over the world. So just give us a little broader picture of what you're up to these days.
Okay. Well, let's start with daughter number 1. Not because she's the favorite, she was just the first one. So, don't you guys back there. This is all going on Snapchat right now. So daughter number 1, Savannah, a.k.a. Woods, her godmother's in the room too. We've been very fortunate. And again, it's a little bit of, not what you know, but who you know, and being at the right place at the right time. She's been very fortunate to compete at 5 stars on her little thoroughbred jack. Let me get emotional. And so we've been very...
I was just showing off the little horses. That's good. No shame in that.
So that's daughter number one. Daughter number two, actually, Cindy's been very helpful with. She went to University of South Carolina in Aiken, started the women's UC Aiken polo team for women. Down there they had a men's team, and she come up in the summers and worked for Cindy a little bit. Grace did not play polo before she went to Aiken. Other than we played broomstick polo with beach balls in the indoor arena in the wintertime, and that was sort of a full contact, pull the bridles off the other horses kind of thing. But she really enjoyed polo, and that's been great. She also had a couple of really nice horses that she produced herself, and she's now saving the world. She's in graduate school at American University, making the world a better place for all of us who are riding horses and enjoying that sort of thing. So she graduates in May.
Or we another question for you? Just that, the thoroughbreds, I mean, are they mostly thoroughbreds, or is there a preference, or?
Yeah, for our horses, or, we love,
Yeah, just tell us.
we love a good thoroughbred. That's our breed of preference. I think I'm in good company here in this room saying that. But we don't discriminate. Here at the farm, anything that works in our program is great. We've had really good luck with thoroughbreds. We've got some mares that we've bred this year. We've got some warm blood crosses coming up. One of our baby horses that we bred, who's a 6-year-old now, is longlisted for the Pan Am Games in dressage with Woodge's fiance, who unfortunately is Canadian, or fortunately is Canadian, so it's not an American. Not going to the Americans, but I guess going to the Pan Am, you take what you get. So we'll take it. We're happy with that. So with our very, very small intermittent breeding program, we produce some nice horses. We don't take credit for Captain Jack. He came to us through a bunch of failed bettings, and so we could afford him, and he's taken us places that we're very fortunate to go.
And hopefully people can come see Full Moon if they'd like to. So we'll tell, if you want out, we'll tell people how to go visit if you'd like to. I think just an editorial comment. I think kids learning anything with horses, polo, showing, dressage, teaches you, or at least it did me. I showed horses for years. You were learning responsibility, work ethic, all of that without knowing you were learning it. You just loved horses, and you didn't mind being at a horse show in 100-degree weather or pouring rain, and I think that is very, very valuable because you love it so much. And I think all of us probably experience that. I mean, especially the people at Fox Hunt now, they go out rain or shine. So I think that's a really important part, teaching kids all that, a work ethic that I'm not sure, is taught as much as it should be these days. So I think that's a really valuable part of what you all do with horses. Yep.
Question for Racing Secretary Woman. Were you involved in setting up the races, number one, and number two? How did you do that before computers in terms of
It was very difficult. It was very difficult, and we had, big books and so much paper and stuff.
Did anybody ever try to sneak anything through on you?
Yeah. No, they wouldn't dare. It is a difficult job, and I don't have that job anymore, and I'm glad. Because it was a difficult job for 18
Were you
years.
involved in filming the
Yes.
races?
Yes, I'm in charge of that department now. But yes, I did used to have to fill the races every day. That was my job.
As racing secretary,
As
that's
racing
their job.
secretary.
That office is to design a race card and also make sure they have enough horses to run those races. Find them.
Which is
And
great.
take them to run.
And back then, we had 6-day week racing.
That's right, that's right. 6 days a week was tough also.
So yeah, it's a very important job. And as Georganne alluded to, there weren't many women doing it. So you all have been somewhat pioneers in probably everything you do. A little bit, certainly around the racetrack. I mean, there were women around the track, Ann's a trainer, but in roles of responsibility, not so much. I don't think so. Yes.
What's the part of those races?
Because of the number of horses now.
People are breeding less?
Yeah, and
But you also,
we've lost a lot of the owners.
but even before that, you have to have the right horse to go in the right race. Like you can't, the horse has to, the conditions have to be exactly right, or that horse isn't eligible to run or even be competitive. So it's not like,
I don't think it's out.
But it's now, and we have more racetracks in our.
Competition.
That are,
Competition.
you know, that are running, you can have all the racetracks within the hours van ride. So, you know, the track should really go anywhere to race it. You know, like this race will go Delaware Park or Parks or something.
Do you think that beds or the states are that in terms of taking the tax breaks away from the horses and moose?
I don't know if that,
That was for a while, yes, it did impact people's interest in breeding horses because they lost some tax advantages, but that was quite a while ago. But now it's more competition, I think, in the states. And Pennsylvania just got experimental wagering in the 70s, so, and now they have free racetracks, and, you know, there's just a lot more races for people to run in, and trainers and owners, of course, will go where the best money is, and so if tracks are running against each other in the region, they're going to probably go where there's more person, but I think it's more that, and the cost of raising horses is a lot.
the full crop is down so much.
Yeah, the national bull crop is declining, so there's a lot of reasons, but Maryland has always been at the forefront of horse racing. The steeplechase world, I mean, as you know, we're getting into steeplechase time, so April is, if you're in Maryland, you're probably going to a steeplechase race in April. And that's a huge tradition. Maryland has a really, and maybe Karen found it, has a really strong history, heritage, infrastructure, and there's just a whole lot of people in Maryland that know something about horses. Their family did it, or they're doing it, or they love it. Probably, I think more so. Maybe Virginia has a pretty strong tradition too, but there's a lot, Pennsylvania's a good example. It just doesn't have the long tradition. We have multi-generation families, and Cappy alluded to her mother, and Maryland's here, so it's just it's a really important part of Maryland's fabric of life, just horses, not just horse racing, but horses in general. You'll know, as you see going, in this, where we are, in Northern Baltimore County, in the valleys, you'll see the valleys they look like they do because of horses. Horse people got together in the 50s and decided, we want to keep this like it is, and made every effort to do that. So, that's land preservation. A lot of it is, the land is being preserved because people have horses. Anyway, Cappy, question for you. So, you're retired, and you generously donated your photographs that you had done for us to us. So that was a huge donation for us, and because we had probably the three top photographers that I know working on the Maryland horse: Cappy, Skip Ball, and Nina Ewing. If you remember the Maryland horse in its heyday, it's now a newsletter in our magazine. We don't like read, but it was everybody read it. It was all about all kinds of horse sports. We had great photography, great stories, and Cappy was a big part of that. But so, I guess I'm thinking a little bit about other things you did, because you worked for the Ravens. I mean, you did a lot of, when you were full on photography, you went out, you did quarter horses, you did a lot of other stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about those experiences?
Standing up. Yes, so the Maryland course, of course, gave me my start, and I'm so grateful. Also, kind of an aside, because this is Women's History Month, I think that in every case here, it wasn't easy to be a woman in our business. We were pretty much pioneers, and when I was interviewed, many times I would be asked, what's it like being a photographer as a woman? And my answer is, it doesn't matter. I'm a photographer. It doesn't matter, what my gender is, because I'm an artist, and people buy my photographs because they like my vision or for whatever reason. From the Maryland course, I expanded into one of my big departures was from the 1984 Olympics, which I was just very fortunate to be hired to go and photograph. And then, of course, so fortunate that our own Maryland-bred Touch of Class won the gold medal.
Iconic photo, actually.
This is my cover from 1984. And we also won the silver medal in eventing. And I was there, I was so fortunate to be able to capture all of that. And from that experience, I got calls from people in the quarter horse industry. So I was hired by Horse and Rider magazine. The very first shoot I did for them was, they called and said, we've been following your career. We'd like you to go to Chicago and photograph a ringer. And I said, what is that? So anyway, in spite of myself, I got the job, and that was my first cover for Horse and Rider. And then I learned so much. I knew nothing about the quarter horse industry, so I was able to travel pretty much all over the United States and Europe to photograph for many top quarter horse breeders, and also was able to learn how to ride a cutting horse, which is great. So much fun. And then from there, I also dabbled in fashion and the NFL, and photographed many weddings. In fact, I always run into either daughters, there's this one, yes, okay. Yes. Oh, okay. And the dogs during dog shows. And every time somebody said, will you come and share a fashion catalog? I didn't know anything about fashion. Ask Holly Bricken back there, because I had a wonderful experience photographing for Barry Bricken clothing. And it was beautiful clothing, and it was just great fun. But why not? Why can't I do it? Why can't you do it? Just get out there and do it. And if it works out, it's great. If it doesn't, well, you can forget about it. Let's go on to the next thing. And what else?
That's it. So let's talk about a favorite. Do you have a favorite memory, favorite horse, favorite, and then we'll go down the line and everybody tell us that, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Secretariat was back then. We could walk right up to them. There was no security. I was just a groupie. I would go up and talk to him and feed him treats and all that stuff. And I got to know his groom, Andy Sweat, and of course, and Penny and Tweety, who was just lovely to me, and remembered me 40 years later when they did the movie. She signed my movie jacket, which I'm very excited about. And then, so that was, the Triple Crown was just one of the most amazing experiences of my life, to be able to photograph that and witness that. It's hard to photograph the stretch run of the Belmont Stakes through tears. It was so emotional. And then in the quarter horse world, there's a stallion named One Time Pepto, who is one of the top cutting horse stallions ever. I photographed him as a 3-year-old, and then I photographed him, all of his babies, from the time they were born until they went into the major cutting horse futurity, which is their first big show. Their biggest show is their very first show, which is crazy. And his very first crop, one of his colts won the cutting horse futurity. So that was very exciting, and that's been a wonderful ongoing group for me, and something that I'm really fond of is that cutting horse industry. But Secretariat is, above and beyond. What are you using?
He was above and beyond,
yeah.
Of course.
Yes.
It was,
Yes.
so yeah, just pass it on and tell us, now we'd like to hear what you got a little emotion already, but it's emotion and, your favorite horse, your favorite experience.
So, kind of tying into what Cindy was talking about, sometimes you don't always know your impacts, and as an instructor, you really try to, set a good example and sort of try to make good people. And when I reread your email about 10 minutes before I got here, I was like, what am I supposed to do? And sort of thinking about, favorite memories and that sort of thing. I was a riding director at Camp Nawaqua in Poland, Indiana, my last 2 years in college, which basically involved 15 horses that were dropped off, and you had to sort of sort them out and we had a good time. It was a very good roommate, great friend of mine who was my assistant riding director, and we had 2 great summers. And 10 years, that was probably 15 years later, we had a reunion at Camp Nalaqua for all the old counselors and that kind of thing. And my husband was nice enough to be the only man that actually showed up to the reunion with me. And it was an overnight thing, and we sort of sat around the campfire and we were talking, and just things you never really sort of think about how you make an impact. But we were all sort of talking about favorite memories of camp and that sort of thing. And one woman who was probably 21 or 22 at the time had also been a counselor, and I sort of vaguely remembered, her name, and there was something really familiar about her. And we were going around the campfire. We all slept in teepees too. That was kind of fun. But anyway, she was saying what her favorite memory was at camp. She was maybe 7 or 8 years old, and the first night of camp we made the kids run because they're all homesick and they're all crying and throwing up and they were just really miserable and it was horrible. So we'd make them go on this mile run through the woods. So we got them really tired out because that was the only thing to do that we figured out would keep them quiet. And so there's one little blonde-haired girl I remember who just was not built for running. This was just not her thing to do, and she was really struggling. And I remember, running back to the end. I was a lot fitter back then. Ran back to the end of the line and took her hand and ran with her, to the finish line, and that was the camp counselor. And it was yeah. But it was just okay, well that's, yeah.
Way to go, Bridget.
We're not gonna get Georganne to cry, right? Only Katie can do that. You can get Katie.
I would say one of my favorites is Cigar. It's really cool horse.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Ratchet. Ratchet classes around there.
Yeah, it's a horse. But I would say Rachel Alexander. And when Rachel Alexander came to the Preakness, I was the racing secretary, and she was not nominated, so she had to be supplemented. So we had some owners that didn't want her to run against her, and we had a full field. We can run 14, and so they were trying to put other horses in the race, so Rachel couldn't get in the race. So my phone was ringing off the hook. I couldn't answer because the lawyers are saying, don't answer. The lawyers were looking up all the rules saying, because she was had to be supplemented and she had to get in over a Triple Crown nominee written on the original one. And so we had to stay away from the phone and the press and everything. But finally, she had the same right to get in over a Triple Crown nominee horse. And we basically talked the owner about not trying to keep her out. He was going to put in another horse that he brought to run that weekend, but not in the Preakness, he wasn't original. So we basically talked him out of it, and she ended up winning, so that was nice.
Wow, yeah, so there's a lot of behind-the-scenes Preakness stories.
Yes, there
that
were.
we're getting to. A lot of drama. I think there's so much drama on TV that it actually all happens behind the scenes.
Repeat the question? No. I would say one of the coolest things about polo for me is as a player, I'll stand up because then I can see all you guys. I feel like I'm talking to somebody. As a player, it's a very small pot of people. There's only 5,000 people in the United States that are registered with the association. So it's a really small little community. But I've gotten to go a lot of places, and because I started playing when there weren't that many women playing, I got to go a lot of places and play. And a lot of those opportunities, international things, and just to have, Winston Churchill is credited with saying that the polo handicap is your passport to the world. But I've been able to go and play in Argentina, in India, in Hawaii, which I know is part of the United States, but it's still way cooler, in Ireland. And so those have been really amazing opportunities. As far as sort of things that stick in my mind as a coach, it's always great to see, it's interesting, some of the kids you connect more with than others, and like you said, you don't know kind of which ones you really make an impact on. but to see my quote-unquote old girls as adults, to see that they still sort of carry on some of the things that I hopefully taught them, like not running up scores on teams that you could beat really easily and that kind of thing. But I think the most thing that got to me the most is Baltimore Community Foundation runs a program during the summer, hopefully they still do it, called Middle Grades Partnership, and Garrison Forest partnered with a middle school that's kind of near Johns Hopkins Hospital. And those kids came to Garrison for enrichment in all sorts of different things, but the whole point was if you get them walking in the door of high school successful, they'll stay in high school. So I decided I was going to offer them, sort of like the Work to Ride program in Philly, that I would give them an introduction to horses and horsemanship and polo. So we had a bunch of girls, and they were terrified, and it was a challenge, but we got them all, and I had a lot of helpers of my old students, and you know their final day that they got to show off for their parents is they did a cavalry drill at the posting trot, and they got to hit the ball right out of the walk, and it was amazing. And some of the girls were not very athletically built, and one of them wrote me a book, or gave me something afterwards, and it was like, you didn't see me, you didn't see me as a big girl. You saw me as someone that could do this, and
Thanks, Karen.
I remember this girl very vividly, and how scared she was, and the horse she got on was Lenny, and she was terrified, and it's like, that meant more to me than, national championships or whatever, that hopefully she went on to sort of go, all right, this is really scary and really challenging, but I can do it.
Ponies, a little bit about the ponies. Are they thoroughbreds?
The best polo ponies you see now are usually bred in Argentina, unfortunately, because we're trying to get more of the breeding in the States, but they're thoroughbred crosses. They have a lot of thoroughbred blood in them, but they're also, the Argentines started crossing thoroughbred stallions with the Criollo mares, which are like their quarter horses, to get these compact, strong, but have the stamina of thoroughbreds. And now they just are breeding polo ponies to polo ponies. We won't even go into the clone issue. But anyhow, I think mine were always, the ones I played were always a little bit of a variety, and school horses, and Karen can say this, there's nothing more blessed than a school horse. God love them. And one of my favorites was a horse named Palermo, who you could put a second grader on in the morning, and he might be the first horse they ever canter on, or he would, do this, and he'd go to the varsity tournaments and win best flying pony. I mean, the fact that they can do, if they just adjust to whoever's on is just amazing. But anytime, I think most polo players would say, getting a best flying pony award is more important than winning a most valuable player, because they do so much for us.
So, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So, do you prefer mares as polo ones?
That polo is one of the few, I think, horse club, they do prefer mares. A good gelding is a great gelding is a great gelding, but the polo players prefer mares just because they have just a little more trot. And I don't know about that. I think they get used to so much stuff, but they tolerate it. They just have a little more, and I get really excited to see in the show jumping world at the higher levels. There's so many mares now and stallions, and there are some polo playing stallions. Not for me, but a good one's a good one,
So now we're going to open up for questions. I'll bring a mic if you think you need it. So you can hear the range of experiences we have, and I think this is a good representative group of women and horses. So thank you guys for coming. But I want to ask, anybody can ask questions. We've had people who can ask inside baseball questions and people who can ask just anything you want to know questions. And so raise your hand, please. And
Barney, I've got one. For you were talking about it being difficult to fill races. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
might have otherwise because the trainer said, this is going to be a nice horse for something else. Are you losing some to that, or are you not seeing that?
To tell you the truth, we'd like to lose more to that, right? I mean, Corinne's a commissioner in Pennsylvania, so she knows. But we are, we'd like the trainers to stop them where they can have another, don't run them into the ground before they can do another occupation. And I'm on the board of the thoroughbred aftercare and the wire, which is our Maryland aftercare. So we try to find, but no, that's not it. It's just the amount of horses, we just don't have them like we used to.
Well, I think the thoroughbred market, showers market, has come back a little. When I was showing in the 70s, they were pretty much the preferred horse, and then more bloods came in, and there was really a huge decline in people wanting thoroughbred horses. But now, because of the thoroughbred horse shows and the various groups that are trying to find, aftercare and other things for them to do, there is a market again, I believe. Questions? Come on. We have time. Lots of time. Okay.
Cricket, I have a question up here.
Okay, you just have to talk loudly.
Georganne, what are your overall responsibilities, and what's like a typical day for you?
Well, I get there between 6:30 and 7. I watch, we have vets that watch training every morning, so I help them watch training to make sure, if anything happens, and then after that I do my paperwork and wait for the races and, go to the paddock, make sure everything was, I sort of oversee all of it, all of the racing, so just have to be there in case something happens, basically.
Are you there, are the vets there in the morning to in case something happens, or are they looking for horses and finding us down?
Both. It's a very good question. Yeah, the management, we've hired 2 vets now, that's their job. They're different from the state vets. The state vets are only their own race day. And so these 2 vets come and they watch training every morning to see if they see a horse that's going bad and, they pull them off the track. And also if something happens in grounds too.
Are you optimistic about the future of racing in Maryland with all the things that are going on with redoing Pimlico and Laurel? And every year something changes and doesn't seem to be much progress, and Stronax and all sorts of stuff.
I promised Georganne she wasn't going to talk about that today. So honestly, but the reality is, I think we're all very hopeful things are going to turn out well for everybody. And Preakness and the racetracks are, an important part of Maryland. But if you want to add,
I don't think race is going to leave Maryland.
No,
It's so
absolutely.
important to the state here. I don't think it's going to leave Maryland. I don't know.
And the facilities are important, so it just has to be determined how best to move forward. And I think that's what's going on right now. So we're looking forward to Preakness, a strong Preakness, a good Preakness, and then we're on to the next steps. But
I'm going to say it here. I had a question for Cappy. I don't know when you were retired, but I was curious how much of the digital world improved your experience as a photographer, or maybe you hate technology and you're glad it comes.
Okay, that would be the latter. The question was, how did digital technology affect my work, and did I like it or not? I had to switch over kicking and screaming because I started photographing in 1970, and everything was black and white, and I see it black and white. To me, color is a bonus. And so when I developed my own chemicals and developed my own film, printed my own pictures, and then in, I guess around 2005, because I started working for the NFL in 1996, and we were still shooting film then, and that was really the impetus to switch to digital, because you basically had to wire 100 photographs to the NFL within an hour after the end of the game, and it had to be color corrected, captioned, and cropped exactly. So that was, But I felt that digital could never replace film. Film has just this quality to it. I don't know, I won't say it's depth, but it's a timelessness. It's like finding, when Penny Tweedy called me 40 years after the Triple Crown and said, "Do you have any pictures of my horse?" And I said, "Well, as a matter of fact, I do, but I have to find them." So anyway, I went and I found the negatives, and they were in perfect condition 40 years later. And of course, digital is so easy because you just, and I know Barry is probably hating me because I gave them all of my photographs, and then she had to go through and organize them.
Did you hear her cussing?
Looking at Secretariat right now, since this is 50 years for his Triple Crown, we're probably going to run a thing in the May issue with your pictures and Skip's pictures.
Oh, wonderful.
Stuff
That
that's
was
never
great.
been published before.
Yeah, wonderful. So, yeah, it's just timeless, and you know, photography, the technology has changed everything in a lot of ways for the better. And I retired at the end of 2019 because I couldn't keep up with it. My $7,000 camera body was worth $250. They don't make parts for it anymore. They come out with new cameras every 6 months. And that all started with the tsunami when it destroyed the Nikon factory in Japan. And so they basically just stopped making parts for all the professional models. But it's also wonderful for young photographers who can pick up a camera and fix anything, or the phone. You know, you could do Photoshop on your phone. I don't know how to do that, but it's amazing what technology has done. It's mind-boggling. But I also really appreciate the students in school now who are still taking photography classes and are actually working with film and learning about light and the camera and how it works. And so I hope there's more that continue to do that as well.
And we also are working on digitizing some of the donations we've gotten. Cappy's and
Sorry, Barry.
Skip and Nina also, we have their collections, and so they're on their negatives. And so Barry's been diligently looking into how we can digitize and preserve those long term, because that is the problem with film.
It's not so much digitizing that's the challenge, it's identifying them after they're digitized.
But I mean, we just have to recognize that to save these negatives long term, or film of almost any kind, you need to think, you know, just putting them in a file drawer is not going to, they won't survive long term. I mean, here's a good file. There's a lot of Pimlico. I'd love to get, there's file cabinets up there, Pimlico negatives, 3x4 negatives, and so all that stuff, if you have it, you know, you need to be cognizant of it. We're going to try to be able to digitize film and photos here for you if you don't have the equipment, and keep copies for ourselves and give you copies back. But, you know, all of that, that's part of what our mission here is, trying to preserve history. You'll see that up front there's what we call our media room, but it's got lots of equipment in it. We're going to take oral histories, have people come and record and talk to your families. This is baby steps. We're just learning how to do it. But that's part of what we're going to do here, because a lot of that, you know, is lost already for people that we wish we had. Not even mean video. I mean hearing their voices is what I think is so important, like StoryCorps. So that's why we're here. We started late. You know, we just got this place finished in December of last year. I wish we'd had a home and all this going on for the last 20 years, but it's here now. So that's why we are going to continue to do something like this monthly, a panel, a talk, an author talk, something. It might tie in with a month like Women's History Month or Black History Month or something like that. It might just actually tie in with something else. We're going to do something the end of April to celebrate Albert Harper Point-to-Point Race's 100th anniversary, which is coming up. So, you know, we're going to celebrate local history and national history and have you meet people in this business and in all parts of the business. So, if there are no more questions,
I have a question for Georganne. Did you have to go out and
promotion, with the infield and stuff. So it's, they would normally run and fill in there, but they don't with the locals. So you have to hustle the out-of-towners when they come in, please bring more horses in for the other races.
Well, and every day, and Maryland Million Day, I mean, you're always, I don't call hustling, but encouraging people to run. Call a trainer that might not know that his horse is eligible for a Maryland Million race. So it's identifying and recruiting is a little bit better word than hustling.
You can't say hustle anymore because of the safety and welfare of the horse these days.
Right.
So, and we used to,
Informing them.
we used to basically threaten.
That's not going to go out in the,
We're not allowed to do that anymore.
Were there trainers that you were like happy to see coming in, or that you like talking to, and you knew they were going to bring a whole?
Oh, sure, like if Steve has nuisance, he'll bring 10, 15, not budget, we'll bring a bunch, yeah. We love seeing them come.
they like to come from all reports. They give it a good thumbs up every year, so. Okay. Go ahead.
I'm just curious, I didn't continue to follow, so a few years ago, a lot of horses died out in California. Did that ever get figured out?
I don't think they ever figured out an excuse, but they put in so many safety measures now that,
In terms of footing, is that,
well, the safety measures like, when it rains, they're not allowed to train on a muddy track. They won't race on a muddy track out there now.
They have a lot more cancellations than they ever did when they have a lot of
Right, because they have so many more vets that are there, and they have equipment.
The complaint is everywhere, because it happens in New York, and, everywhere that there are problems,
But San Diego is the most.
that's what I heard.
address it. I mean, they try to.
So there's no reason why that hasn't been seen yet.
Oh, no, not at all.
Okay, there we go.
Could you characterize the type of people that are attracted to polo?
The answer is no. It attracts strong personalities that like to win and are used to being successful. Probably the same type of personalities that Georganne has to deal with on a day-to-day basis.
I'd just like to know your opinions, the panel up there, on the Maryland 5-star coming here several years ago. I mean, that's kind of a big deal to come to Maryland. How do you guys feel about that?
That's great.
It definitely put Maryland on the map more.
Definitely.
Right.
I think if you were in Kentucky and asked that question, you'd probably get a different answer. But, too bad, yeah.
Is there just one question back there?
Also, what we didn't mention was the therapeutic riding programs, which I think are wonderful. One of the best, the most memorable stories I ever shot was on a survivor from the Columbine high school shooting who recovered because of a horse. And so that is very near and dear to me. So I don't know if it's something that you want to.
That's a good point. Yes, we didn't talk about that. I don't have somebody here that really works on that. But that has become more and more the focus. I mean, for a long time, you always heard that horses heal, but now there's many groups that work on all kinds of, whether it be the physical or the mental, emotional support with horses. And it's also very interesting to people who know nothing about the horse industry, politicians, and the two things that politicians want to talk about, we talk to them a lot from the racing industry, are that therapeutic. What is it? Who does it serve? What do they do? And the other thing is aftercare for their horses. So both of those are very important parts of the industry and have grown significantly. So they're actually finding more and more. There's a fundraiser coming up at the end of April, I think, at Pharmacy Brewing for the City Ranch, which takes horses to schools. And what they're finding now with at least inner city kids, from what I understand, if you can start them with horses as young children and sort of try to ameliorate, alleviate some of the trauma that they see in the city, especially growing up in the city. As their brains are growing, you know, it can change their whole life. So I think that it's that important. Yep.
I've seen programs where they take veterans coming back from action and that they can't cope and find their way back to society, and they introduce them to horse racing, not just horses in general.
Exactly. I think they actually do something at the Ag Center there on Chelan Road with veterans. And you're right, they may not ride, they touch and walk around and brush and, you know, connect with horses. I mean, again, all of us who spend time with horses understand when you feel like you have that emotional connection to them, whether you're riding them or just taking care of them.
The Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation also has their programs with prisons.
They do. They do. Yeah. I haven't been over there lately. It's reopened. Yeah, I went too. And so they closed for a little while, and I think they've just started up again. So they're not unfortunately able to take a whole lot of prisoners. And the goal is to have them spend some time there and then maybe find another outlet for their skills.
Yeah, we had one of the prisoners who graduated came to Norway.
I think that was sort of the goal, and they do it in other states as well for their retirement. So that's another option, trying to teach. You know, there is a need for help. I know that, you know, most trainers, I'm sure, show people are looking for good help. So that's another need that needs to be worked on. And apprenticeships are good. You know, work experience, sort of the stuff we started this on with the career program. Or go like Cindy, go hang out at a barn, send your daughter there. I mean, everybody's looking for. Somebody came in the other day and said they were a stall technician in their youth. So you can always offer that as a first career, a stall technician. Okay, well, we are out of the clock, so that's an hour. So please hang around and chat among yourselves. We have some cookies and sodas and water. There's lots of very interesting people here. Some of you know each other and some of you don't, but we're happy to have you come today. I see a lot of supporters for this place, so please be proud and pat each other on the back for helping us get it done. Thank you very much.